The Panthers have certainly treaded water over the last few weeks and now have a chance to get to the top of the division. And the Panthers, third best front office in all of sports.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, December 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, the host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Nich Fairbanks joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You can follow him on X at Prudentia0. Shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. You can do that all on Game Time. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Cats. Today, we are going to discuss further into the Panthers' 6-1-1 run over these last few weeks. Then we are going to discuss the Panthers being in the top 3 in front office rankings through all of sports, not just the NHL, all of sports. And then we are going to preview this weekend's back-to-back on Friday and Saturday between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes and St. Louis Blues. But Nich, grateful to have you once again on the show, as always, on a Friday. But, man, this 6-1-1 run for the Florida Panthers, I mean, you look at right before this where the Panthers have gotten themselves in with points in 7 of their last 8, and the fact that we were one thing I was just looking for was a little bit of a streak for the Panthers. And before this, the only 3-game winning streak that the Panthers had was in the first week of the season, where they had those 3 consecutive home games to start, and then it kind of was a little bit of a roller coaster of emotions with those 4 straight road losses, and then just an up and down from there. And now with the results last night, with Boston losing regulation to Edmonton, Tampa Bay losing in regulation as well to LA, where they held 2/3 of the shot attempts over the Kings, and Anton Forsberg starting in back-to-back games. Panthers it's right there. And the Detroit Red Wings, they've fallen off a little bit from their start. And right now, the Panthers can get to the top of the division by weekend's end. What incredible run that the Panthers are on.
Definitely. The first 3 games of the season couldn't have asked for a better start considering the circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now they had to tread water and at least be a little bit over 500, or at least be 500. And, I would definitely say that there's some luck that's been with that, because the division and the whole Eastern Conference has been just so jumbled up and it's so competitive this year. So it actually works to their advantage. And as you said, they needed a streak to stay within striking distance, and they are playing their best hockey of the season now. I do think it did take, a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, to really kind of instill exactly what these new positions are. And what I mean by positions is guys getting familiar with their new jobs and what their assignments are going to be. So there always is some time for that, and especially under Maurice's system, it does take a little bit. But now, just before the Christmas break, which I think the cutoff is actually at midnight tonight. I think Florida's in a really good position to be in a playoff spot by Christmas.
No doubt. And you think about the game-winning goals that the Panthers had in the beginning of the season against Chicago and Philadelphia, and then doing so in Boston. And then it took a few weeks for the Panthers to really get those goals in clutch moments. And you saw that in the Utah game just last week again, on the road, where that was a big win to start the road trip. And then there were times where giving the opposition nothing in the most recent game against Dallas, and then finding ways to score on counterattacks when the puck isn't necessarily on the opponent's end throughout the game, and then and also ability to come back. I mean, the Panthers, that's been a rarity, and then being down as much as 4-1 recently against Columbus, but also the Panthers have also been able to get offense from the blue line. It hasn't necessarily resulted in goals as far as statistically from those guys, but getting play from the defensemen, and as far as getting those clear shooting lanes and rebound opportunities, that has been huge. And during the stretch from December 4th to now, the Panthers are averaging 3.75 goals per game. Although their power play is 18th during that stretch, I mean, the even strength play, which has been the Panthers' key to success throughout their two playoff runs to Stanley Cup championships. I mean, that has been very helpful to how they have been getting comfortable in these games. And I also think where you had to mix and match with the bottom pair of Sebrango and Petrie, and now bringing back Uvis Balinskis, now he's starting to get comfortable as well with the new partner.
He definitely is. I know Petrie's been up and down this season, but sometimes you're put in positions that you're going to be uncomfortable in, and you got to adapt to it. And I think he, as a veteran, is starting to do that. And the Panthers, one of their main, I guess, takeaways coming into this season is, are they going to be able to score? Well, we're about 30-ish games in, and yeah, there was some scoring deficiencies probably in the middle of all that. But now, when they're playing their best hockey and they're playing some pretty good teams, they are scoring at a good clip. So maybe the scoring isn't 100% the whole issue. Maybe it is the lack of scoring in some games, and then unfortunately the bad defensive play, and then letting in some goals that maybe you should have gotten saves with. So overall, I think it's a culmination of everything that's kind of led to, some of the disappointing games that they have had. But I think what's more impressive is the games that they've been able to play like 60 minutes, like the Dallas game, the Tampa game, in my opinion, that was a full 60 minutes. And you just see the team is coming together, and now they are going to be getting some healthy players back. And you have to imagine, and again, you have to imagine how good this team it might be to get that little swagger back.
No doubt. And Sherwood Hockey did a little bit of a promotion with Matthew Tkachuk yesterday. And I'm just thinking, it feels like the worst kept secret of him coming back for the Winter Classic. I mean, all that hype for him to not come back, I feel like it'd be such a big tease. But just look at the goal scores from even recently in their last game against the LA Kings. Anton Lundell, for Sam Bennett, and Carter Verhaeghe. Both of them got goal number 11, but remember what we were talking about in the month of November, that they were having a Brad Marchand reliance problem. It was just him and Sam Reinhart, but it's now been those depth scores. I mean, Anton Lundell, during his intermission interview with Katie Engelson in the second intermission, just in their most recent game, spoke about not trying to be like Alexander Barkov, still trying to be himself, but know that he has like that added responsibility in his game. I mean, yeah, he's still playing PK minutes. He's getting an elevated role on the power play, although it's not scoring at an extremely great rate. But still, the fact that the Panthers are getting a whole bunch of ozone time, winning some key. Anton Lundell is still winning some key draws, and his ability to win those battles and maturing into his body, that's also been for Lundell key as far as this 6-1-1 stretch.
So maybe the term or the nickname that we've donned upon him is Baby Barkov. Maybe it's something that maybe should start going away, because he is becoming his own player. He is a different player than Barkov. Nobody's going to be Barkov. Let's just get that offset right now. But with the way that Lundell's playing right now, he is the team's top center. They are putting him in every single position to help the team succeed. And, he's scoring at a rate that I think we haven't seen before. And yes, that does come with more opportunity, but he is taking on the other team's top lines now. You see that during the playoffs, but I think there's just an extra intensity within those games where I think, he's going to be playing his best. And now that he's doing that in the regular season and he's figuring that out, it's no coincidence that he's putting up numbers and that he might break his career high in points. So it's good to see that Sam Bennett is scoring, because I know at one point Greer had more goals than him.
Yeah.
But I think he's starting to settle and he's starting to play his game that he needs to. So it's good to see that it's not the Brad Marchand show, even though he is still scoring, but excuse me, Reinhardt is still leading this team as well. He's the one that's, I guess, told the team exactly what they need to do, and they've been following him, especially with speed and how they're playing.
Yeah, and Anton Lundell's point pace is going to be over 50, where his career high was 45 just last season. So he's definitely on his way and getting that elevated role. But let's also give credit to the goaltending as well during the stretch since December 4th. Bob and Tarasov are both over 900 save percentage at 902, which, funny enough, Tarasov is when the Panthers have Tarasov in the net most recently, they're giving up 3 more shots on net per Tarasov starts versus Bobrovsky. But some starts could also skew that number. 15 shots against when the Panthers took on the Dallas Stars, and then that game against the Colorado Avalanche where Tarasov was in net, that could definitely get those numbers in certain directions there. But overall, the Panthers in the season still give up less whenever Tarasov is in goal. But let's transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the fact that the Panthers were voted the 3rd best front office in all of sports, and give our opinions and compare the Panthers to the other teams that are on the list. And we'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, with 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, but let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pick a game, tap the section, have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view features is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seats before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets for every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of Game Time. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, December 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. And you already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast with no interruption, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month and $50 or $50 a year. Go check the link in the show notes to learn more. Armando Velez here with Nich Fairbanks on another edition of Fairbanks Friday, where The Athletic did a poll, a vote for the best front offices in all of sports. That was definitely promoted by a lot of the media members from the Jessica Blaylocks, David Dworks, Jameson Olives of the world, and this was a poll that was throughout the 4 major sports in North America. And the Panthers finished number 3 behind the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Nick, the most impressive thing about the Panthers getting to this point is not only the championships and the success for them, but what they were able to do and the Panthers coming back from paying for rentals in Claude Giroux and Ben Sherratt, and then having to flip Jonathan Huberdeau for Matthew Tkachuk, and as well as for a coaching change and evaluating that part. That's the most impressive part. Yeah, there's the extending Barkov when there was a flat cap to make that contract look one of the best in sports. But the fact that Bill Zito did not sit back even after giving up multiple assets after he went for it, and knowing when to pounce and when not to, that the evaluation, how Bill Zito goes about that's the most impressive thing.
You have to give full credit to him and his team being able to not only scout, but also figure out who's going to be best for the system that they're going to play. Maurice also probably has some input into, hey, these are the guys I need, especially on the blue line, which, hopefully that's going to be something sooner. Hopefully they'll bring in some help. But not only is it, the front office with Bill Zito and everything, you have to think about the pieces that, allow him to do that. You have ownership with Viola, that, basically say yes or no, or always wants to be a winner. So it's really good to have an owner that really does actually say and do what he says. But the other thing you have to think about too is, where was this franchise maybe a decade ago? For me, being a fan of this team for going on 25 years now, I can think of multiple ownerships and multiple GM, teams. And while some of them had some success, it's not to this height and it's not with this ferocity. I mean, I can't remember exactly what Bill Zito said, a couple seasons ago or even last season was, what's your approach to the trade deadline? And I think he said something like, or what's the team's play like? It's like, it's like beautiful destruction or something like that. And that's exactly what they've been able to do, and they stick to it. So it's not surprising to me that they are able to identify who's still going to be able to play that style, but also who's going to be able to be a great um, locker room guy as well.
Yeah, and getting the opportunity to extend guys once you do trade for them. And I mean, look at the Sam Bennett trade for them. 2 second-round picks, including Emil Heineman, who's been traded multiple times since that trade. Now he's with the New York Islanders. Brad Marchand, the conditions put because we didn't know how healthy he was going to be, and then that flipping into a first, which now the Panthers don't have a first till 2028. Brandon Montour, he went for a third, and he was able to become a top power play guy when he wasn't necessarily in that role to begin his tenure with the Florida Panthers. And obviously the best one of them all, probably the waiver pickup of Gustav Forsling, getting him for free, and then now the best contract, making under $6 million for an 8-year stretch as well. Outstanding. And also the fact that they were able to identify a goaltender in the 7th round in Devin Levi and flipping that for Sam Reinhart. So, and now there's questions on what Buffalo did prior to their GM firing Kevin Adams about rushing Devin Levi to the NHL. But look at the other teams that they are surrounded by. The Dodgers, which there's no salary cap in Major League Baseball. They have all the permission to spend. The deferred contracts of Shohei Ohtani. They've been able to get Blake Snell. They recently just signed closer Edwin Diaz from the New York Mets, and also able to put international free agency as well, getting Yamamoto into the mix, one of their other pitchers. But also Oklahoma City, there was a big trade that they made for trading away Paul George to the LA Clippers, and then bringing in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Canadian basketball player, by the way. And also, along with that trade, he didn't explode just yet, but also they still have assets from that trade, and they're going to get multiple first-round picks, while the LA Clippers are in a little bit of a disaster there, while they're kind of under investigation right now with paying Kawhi Leonard in another way that's not in the NBA salary cap there. But look at what they've been able to do. And one of the teams right behind the Panthers in the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman, being able to win multiple championships with a different head coach, a different quarterback. He won the first one with a backup quarterback, by the way, and then still not being content with the first round pick that they used, and getting a big body quarterback in Jalen Hurts as well, and also being able to build around the trenches. I compare hockey when it comes to the trenches in football to aggressive forecheck and how it carries you as well as being able to run the football with in the case of the Philadelphia Eagles. So the fact that they have been able to adjust and reinvent themselves, which that's a little harder to do with hockey with the less roster turnover. The only really team that's been able to really reinvent themselves since in the cap era post lockout has been the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Panthers reinvent themselves as they still have multiple players under contract until 2030.
Yeah, and when the list came out, you can't argue with the Dodgers and what they're doing. Multiple World Series, and then every single star wants to go play for them, and they are getting them. So it's kind of fun, but at the same time, it's like, what else is going to happen in MLB next season? And then you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I kind of like looked at and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if they could be above Florida. But after kind of like remembering how their drafting has gone and how they've been able to build their teams, I mean, look at their first championship run, that they tried with Durant and Harden, and I think it was Westbrook. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're all guys that were drafted and they're doing it again, and they just won last year. So you can definitely see that there is a body of work that, goes into that team, and they've done very, very well. And then you have the Panthers. We already spoke about them. So, I mean, it's a really good top three. Have no arguments after thinking about it. And, hopefully it does end up being Panthers moving to number 2 after this season, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, no doubt. And hey, being the first hopefully being the first three-peat since the early 80s Islanders, that will definitely put them in a certain echelon and a level of respect. But also when it comes to the Dodgers and them getting permission, I don't think the Dodgers are necessarily ruining baseball. I think the teams who are not spending are the ones who are ruining baseball. I mean, looking at you, Marlins, looking at you, Pittsburgh Pirates, looking at you, Chicago White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the teams that are, in my opinion, are not are ruining the sport more than the Dodgers. And hey, we could actually see a work stoppage in the sport. That's been heavily rumored there over the last few years. So we will see. But hey, the, I wish my team could spend like that. I wish, but hey, it's only not all wishes come true for sure. But let's transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss and preview the upcoming back-to-back for the Florida Panthers as they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes and the St. Louis Blues at home. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more, and it keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday edition of the show. Armando Velez here with Nich Fairbanks here on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. And if you happen to be located in South Florida, Benny's Buddies has officially launched their merchandise, and you could get them in person at the Humane Society of Broward starting today at 11 a.m. Once that merch once I get an opportunity to have the merch, I will definitely be getting some myself, at least a hat here. But the Florida Panthers have a back-to-back at home this weekend against the Carolina Hurricanes and the St. Louis Blues. Two teams that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum this season. The St. Louis Blues probably the most disappointing team this season, but Carolina at the top of the Eastern Conference with the best record, almost a 700 points percentage, mostly doing it without Jacob Slavin, who just returned to the lineup there. But there was also some early drama, Nick, for Andrei Svechnikov being on the fourth line. He's back on the top line, but there was a discussion on whether he was going to be traded, and also the fact that their power play is not the best. They're still able to score at 5-on-5. They still suppress shots at a very low rate of around 24 in the league. We know that their style is very similar to the Florida Panthers, and Seth Jarvis has still continued to pick it up after being on the Four Nations team. And although the Panthers really exposed that top 6 of the Carolina Hurricanes in the playoffs just last year, they've been able to reinvent themselves as well with letting older guys go like Dmitry Orlov, Brent Burns, and Shane Gostisbehere. Top 3 on the team in points, and it's not happening on the power play. He's actually doing that at even strength. South Florida native, Shane Gostisbehere, mind you. but they're getting scoring spread out all over, and just like the Panthers have how they've been doing it, it's another thing for the team that's similarly built like Florida.
Yeah, and who thought that the Blues were going to be where they are right now, especially kind of like what they were able to do last year. So, um, not s- not surprising where Carolina's at, right? They've been at the top of the East, or at least the Atlantic Division, or the Metro Division. I'm sorry, for the last couple of years. So, you know, maybe they've kind of figured some things out after a couple seasons of being in the postseason and not being able to go past the Eastern Conference Finals. So now in the playoffs, you need, your third and fourth lines to contribute. And now that they had their scoring spread out, it's working for them, and it can cover up some holes, such as, losing a Jacob Slavin. I also do think that it's a coincidence, or at least, the hockey gods kind of giving them something back with Mr. Boosie being their goaltender and starting off like 10-1-1, like the best and a goalie's ever done to start his career. But you also have to sustain that, and you have to be able to play that way in the playoffs. So big question marks for them going down the season. But as of right now, they are the best team in the East, and Florida's got a huge task. So can't wait to see how they're going to match up, especially with the way that they've been playing lately. And if they continue to play with how they have been over the last couple of games, it would be a really good game, and I could see it coming down to a goal, in the final frame.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a revenge for the whole Gustav Forsling picking up him off waivers from Carolina. Hey, you get one back. Brandon Bussi winning 11 of his first 12 games. That's the fastest rate a goalie has ever had to start his career. But also Nikolai Ehlers, they got the best free agent on the market, even though free agency has been a dud over the last few years, and it's going to continue to be that way. But being on that second line with Logan Stankoven, who they got from the Mikko Rantanen trade, Jackson Blake as well, who's a homegrown guy. Mackie Samoskevich a USHL teammate, by the way, Jackson Blake. They're working on that same line as well. So he hasn't necessarily exploded, but we also see what Winnipeg was kind of missing when Connor Hellebuck was out. So to cover all of their scoring woes there. But so we see the value there. So Freddie Anderson is a UFA after this year. Kochekov has a year left. So maybe coming into next year, it's going to be a Bussy Kochekov kind of tandem there. And one of three teams who in the East who carry three goaltenders, Buffalo being the other one, Montreal as of right now. And still don't know whether Jordan Martinook is going to play. He did leave their game on Wednesday against the Predators. So we will see if he is in the lineup. But St. Louis, another a team that's on the opposite direction. They're kind of like up a creek without a paddle. And so many, we've talked about the amount of contracts and the amount of clauses that they've had over the last few years, but this is also a transition period for them. They're going to be transitioning from Doug Armstrong, who's also the general manager for Team Canada for the Olympics. They're also going to be giving the reins to Alexander Steen come next year. So he's also kind of learning the ways there. But Torrey Krug has been on LTIR for the last 2 years. His career is likely over. Nick Leddy was put on waivers this past offseason as a free player, where San Jose was able to claim him to get to the cap floor along with the Carey Price contract, which they traded for. But Montreal had a wealth in their of D-men in their system, and they traded one of their forwards for a defenseman, an area of need for them, and it still hasn't worked out. Although Logan Mailloux, who had a lot of problems in his draft in the year of his draft when Marc Bergevin was still the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, but he's only played 31 games in the NHL, so it's going to be a little bit of a tough time for this St. Louis Blues team. Who you think the Florida Panthers are injured? Man, the St. Louis Blues are in probably worse shape than the Panthers. With Jimmy Snuggerud, which is a nice prospect, is out. Jordan Kyrou is out for multiple weeks. Dylan Holloway, who one of the offer sheets that they had a few years ago, but also their goaltending's not bailing them out. At the beginning of the season, we talk about shot suppression with Florida and Carolina. At the beginning of the season, they were also suppressing shots as well, but they were giving up a lot of goals even though they were suppressing a lot of shots. And we speak about Jordan Binnington, how he's Canada's best option, but he might not even be the best option on his own team. Joe Holfer has 3 shutouts on the season for what it's worth. And Jim Montgomery has tried doing so many things as far as getting a spark from his team. And just a few weeks ago, he healthy scratched Jordan Kyrou right before they faced Buffalo, and they ended up getting a win. So, and Jordan Kyrou has been in some trade rumors as of recently this offseason. So it's a development transition for St. Louis as they've gotten they're trying to go away from the contracts that got them a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and they're what, 6 or 7 years now removed from winning their cup. I understand wanting to keep kind of like that core group together, but a lot of them have moved on. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think that they're paying the price for keeping the older guys around, and not really trying to reinvent themselves, or at least get younger players that can fill those spots. So I think they're seeing that now. Bennington was young enough, and he had that huge run when they won the cup. So maybe it's time now. Maybe he could use a fresh look. But with the new GM coming in, I think this year is more or less just like, hey, we're going to see what we got kind of year. And Doug is going to definitely give Steen, the ropes, and really show him like, hey, this is what I would do in this situation, or this is what I would do to improve the team. But as you said, these contracts right now, probably not putting him in the best position. But who knows what'll happen? Maybe they'll get off some of them, because maybe some teams do need to get to the cap floor, like San Jose does next year as well. So I mean,
Chicago.
well, I think they're going to go out and spend, to be
Yeah.
honest. So my thing is that you can't hold on to older players that are not really producing for you. They might be role players, but if they're not doing exactly what you paid them to do, and not for what they've done, then
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to be successful.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Cam Fowler is 34, and his contract doesn't end until 2029. Colin Parayko is still is 32, and his is until 2030. Bennington at least has 1 year left after this, even though he's 32 as well. I'm surprised Edmonton didn't try trading for Jordan Bennington. Although I would have chosen him over Tristan Jarry, but who knows what they would have had to have given up. But also Jarry got hurt last night in Boston as well, for what it's worth. It kind of reminds me of when the Sens, not Sens, the Sabres traded for Josh Norris from the Senators, and he gets hurt immediately. I'm like, pretends to be shocked when it comes to that. But just again, it comes to the amount of clauses that are tied up on them, with which Parayko has a no move, but I don't know if how many people would actually take the contract as well. At least in the case of the rest of their defense, Justin Falk is a few years away from being a UFA, so they could actually reset things a little bit there. But it's a great opportunity this weekend, Nick, and I'm gonna recheck the tweets from Jameson Olive of FloridaPanthers.com. There's no announcement on who's going to be starting in goal just yet. I'm going to guess it's Sergei Bobrovsky, since Tarasov got the most recent start there. So I'm going to assume that Evan Rodriguez is back on the ice after leaving the previous game with a lower body injury, going out twice in the last game. But the fact that the roster freeze is here, and the fact that the Panthers haven't had to do an emergency transaction, which you can do during a roster freeze in the case of an emergency, the Panthers don't have to do that. So Panthers can exhale a little bit. They're coming into this game, and we just hope that the Panthers don't get hurt even further. And man, what a big I don't know how many times you could say litmus test in the regular season, but it kind of feels that way tonight.
It does. I mean, you're going up against the East Best, so you gotta, it's a good way to measure yourself. Like you said, a good litmus test. So we'll see where the Panthers are at in their game right now. But then you're going on to play St. Louis, and recently the Panthers have fallen into trap games,
Yes.
unfortunately, and they have not been able to play well for whatever reason. So hopefully they can continue to play a full 60 minutes, or find ways to take over games and sustain themselves. So hoping for 4 points this weekend, definitely. I think they can do it, but it's going to really depend on the goaltending that they get, and if the defense and the forwards want to work together like they have over the past couple of weeks.
No doubt. And let's hope for that. And hey, the Panthers will, especially if they're able to get a win tonight with the amount of guys out, man, would we be pumped here in all of South Florida if they are able to get a win? And can they follow that up in the case that, because there are such thing as logo games on the other side, where you wake up and you see another logo of a team that might be towards the bottom, and is the motivation going to be there? But again, like we spoke about in the offseason, when you have this many injuries on your roster, you're gonna have to be put more of an emphasis to getting points and racking those up, which the Panthers have been able to do so, thankfully, since December 4th. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, another successful Fairbanks Friday. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
As always, thank you for having me on and being on Fridays. But everybody, you guys can follow me on X at Prudentious0. Let's go get 4 points this weekend. Let's be in the top of the division, or the top 3 at least.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and see you next week. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.